While Göring was melting down his obsolete airships, another German commander was perfecting his own weapon, a weapon of pure terror. His name was Admiral Dönitz, and his weapon was the U-boat. The German U-boat was the shark in the waters, the silent, invisible killer. Hitler's war effort, his entire plan to conquer Europe, depended on one thing: strangling Great Britain. And the U-boat was the hand around Britain's throat. In the early years of the war, Dönitz unleashed his wolf packs, groups of U-boats that would hunt, unseen, in the vast open Atlantic. And they were winning. This was the happy time for U-boat commanders. They sank ships faster than the Allies could build them. They torpedoed tankers, cargo ships, and troop carriers with impunity. Britain was starving. Its supply line was cut. Why were they so effective? Why was this one weapon bringing an entire empire to its knees? Because the Atlantic Ocean was and is enormous. And the U-boats were invisible. They hunted at night, on the surface, moving faster than the convoys they were stalking. They would strike and then vanish beneath the waves. How do you fight an enemy you can't see, in an ocean the size of a continent? The Allies had a devastating problem. It was called the Black Pit. Think of it: Allied planes, long-range bombers like the B-24 Liberator, could fly from bases in Newfoundland or from England and Iceland, but they could only fly so far. Right in the middle of the Atlantic, there was a massive 1,000-mile-wide gap that no Allied plane could reach. This was the Black Pit. And for the U-boats, it was paradise. It was a U-boat's private hunting ground. Here, they were safe from the sky. They could surface, recharge their batteries, and hunt the lumbering convoys at will. If the Allies couldn't find a way to close this gap, a way to hunt the U-boats in their own backyard, the war would be lost. Britain would fall. The question was, how? How could you possibly patrol this vast, empty, deadly stretch of water? What kind of weapon could possibly hunt a submarine in the middle of the ocean? The Allies threw everything they had at the problem. Faster destroyers, more corvettes, new tactics. But the answer, the weapon that would finally terrify the U-boat commanders, wasn't faster. It was slower. The answer was not a high-tech marvel. It was not a sleek, powerful battleship. The answer was a balloon. This, the K-class blimp, built by the U.S. Navy. It's almost comical, isn't it? Compared to Hitler's Hindenburg, this thing looked like a toy. It was a non-rigid blimp, a simple gas bag. It wasn't fast, it wasn't glorious, it wasn't a symbol of anything except stubbornness. But while Hitler had seen his Zeppelins as fragile parade floats, the U.S. Navy saw these humble blimps as the perfect U-boat hunter. Why? What made this slow, wobbly balloon the U-boat's worst nightmare? The answer is one word: endurance. A B-24 bomber could patrol for 8, maybe 10 hours. Then it had to go home. A K-class blimp? It could stay in the air for 50 hours, 2 full days, and some crews pushed it even further. One blimp, in a famous test, stayed airborne for over 3 days without refueling. Can you imagine? The blimp wasn't a hunter that made a quick pass. It was a stalker. It would arrive over a convoy, and it would just stay, hanging in the sky like a persistent, watchful shepherd. But it wasn't just a pair of binoculars on a balloon. This is where the story gets brilliant. The blimps were loaded with cutting-edge, secret technology. First, they had radar. A U-boat's favorite trick was to surface at night, in the dark, and attack. The blimp's radar could see that U-boat's conning tower from miles away in pitch blackness. But what about under the water? That was the U-boat's ultimate sanctuary, right? Not anymore. The blimps carried a second, even more secret weapon. It was called MAD, magnetic
anomaly detection. It was a magic trick. It was a box that could feel the disturbance, the anomaly, in the Earth's magnetic field created by a giant 1,000-ton chunk of metal, a U-boat. It could see the submarine under the waves. Imagine you are a U-boat commander. You're 300 feet down, you are totally safe, you are rigging for silent running. And then suddenly, boom, depth charges, exploding perfectly right above your hull. How? How could they possibly know you were there? You were seen by a magnetic sting from a slow, quiet rubber balloon 1,000 feet above you. For the Wolfpacks, this was a terrifying new reality. The Black Pit, their safe haven, was no longer safe. The blimp was a nightmare. It wouldn't go away. It could mark your position, drop its own depth charges, or even worse, it could just follow you, hovering, dropping a flare and calling in the real killers, the faster destroyers and hunter-killer planes that would pounce on your position. The U-boat's greatest advantage was its invisibility. What happens when a weapon comes along that can see in the dark and see underwater?
The results of this new kind of warfare were staggering. The U.S. Navy formed the Sky Patrol. They flew thousands upon thousands of missions, escorting convoys from the U.S. coast to the Caribbean, to the shores of Europe. And the numbers don't lie. Of the 89,000 ships, 89,000 that were escorted by a Navy blimp, not a single one was lost to a U-boat. Let that sink in. A record of 0. The U-boats, so bold in the happy time, were now terrified. A U-boat captain's log, recovered after the war, had a frantic entry. Blimp sighted, dived, dived, dived. The mere sight of that wobbly balloon on the horizon was enough to send the Wolfpacks running. And now, let's go back to Hitler. While his U-boats were being decimated by American blimps, what was left of his mighty Zeppelin fleet? The Graf Zeppelin II, the most advanced airship in the world, had been melted down. Its massive, state-of-the-art hangars in Frankfurt, which could have been building new airships, sat empty. This is the great, final, staggering irony of the Second World War. The technology that Germany invented, the weapon they perfected, the airship, was completely ignored. What if Hitler hadn't been so blind? What if Göring had seen the airship as more than a failed toy? What if, instead of scrapping the Graf Zeppelin II, he had equipped it with radar and magnetic detectors? What if he had built a fleet of Zeppelin hunters, not to hunt U-boats, but to scout for Allied convoys? With their massive range, they could have been the eyes for the Wolfpacks, radioing in the location of every convoy from anywhere in the Atlantic. The Black Pit might never have been closed. But he didn't. Hitler's hubris, his obsession with bigger, faster weapons, and his shame from the Hindenburg blinded him. He had the U-boat and he had the airship. He held in his hands the problem and the cure. But he never, ever understood that one was the perfect antidote to the other. And in the hands of his enemies, a simpler, humbler version of his own prized technology became the silent, patient, and ruthlessly efficient hunter that helped cost him the war.